Welcome to the Cobwebs channel's top 100 horror movies countdown. I noticed a lot of horror YouTubers love the word brutal, most brutal movie of the year, top 10 most brutal horror films. Well, this list is brutal because making it brutalized me. Yes, I want to acknowledge the inherent absurdity of making a list like this. It's an insane undertaking, and I tinkered with this list like crazy and eventually just had to call it quits and accept what I have. So this ranking is based on my personal taste, my experiences, and my opinion at this specific time. It could have gone a lot of different ways because I discovered I actually have a lot more than 100 favorite horror movies, but this is my list. So my name is Daniel with the Cobwebs channel, and let's get started.
You have a beautiful imagination.
Number 100, Cobweb from 2023. How appropriate is it to kick off the Cobwebs channel's list with Cobweb? This is just one of my favorite modern horror movies. I love the feeling that it's like a dark child's fairy tale horror film. Every moment of this film is just so creepy. I love the dark fall suburban atmosphere of it taking place during the Halloween season. And it does have a monster at the end with an insane practical effect design that I think is really cool. 99, Witchfinder General from 1968. This is a truly savage look at witch hunting practices in the 1600s. It doesn't feature anything supernatural, no actual witches. It's much more a historical film about an actual brutal witch hunter that really existed, and features one of Vincent Price's greatest and definitely his darkest performance. 98, The Lost Boys from 1987. I love vampire movies. I love fun 80s cult classics, and this movie is exactly that. It's a blast. The cast is great. It's got so many locations that are fun to visit. This is just one of the ultimate hangout horror movies, and I just love to throw it on and have a good time. 97, The Birds from 1963. Alfred Hitchcock is known as the master of suspense, and I think this is easily one of his most intense movies. I genuinely love spending time on this small secluded island while there is an eco-horror threat. So many birds flying in. I like the characters that we follow, and this truly puts me on the edge of my seat watching them try to survive this insane situation. 96, Black Pit of Dr. M from 1959. This is the first classic Mexican horror film I'd ever seen. I'm a big fan of those old gothic black and white Italian horror films, but this one is better than almost any of them when it comes to story, characters, just the overall script. It's all really tight, really interesting, has some very dark, macabre ideas, and still delivers that atmosphere all the way. I think it's so good. 95, Pumpkinhead from 1988. I think what's really remarkable about this movie is it genuinely works as a tragedy. It opens with a horrific event happening to Lance Henriksen's character, and we watch him go on this horrible revenge mission that just feels sad and empty, and like it's not going to bring satisfaction to anyone. It just results in barbaric killing. But it's also really fun to watch. It's an amazing monster movie directed by Stan Winston. The Pumpkinhead monster is so beautifully realized, and the atmosphere is truly a sight to behold. 94, The Uninvited from 1944. One thing I did want to say about this list is I did not take historical importance into account when making my picks, which means there are some major respected classics that aren't going to be here because they might be ones that I more respect than love. And there are some very old respected classics on here that are not here because I just wanted to pay respect to them. They're here because I genuinely love them. And that's the case with The Uninvited. It is important because it's the first haunted house film to take ghosts seriously. And I love it because I love the characters. I love the atmosphere. I do find the ghost mystery genuinely intriguing and leads to an emotional climax that I think really works. 93, Frankenstein Created Woman from 1964. The first Hammer film to make the list. list. I love these classic Hammer flicks. I love Peter Cushing as Dr. Frankenstein. And it's interesting how the whole Hammer Frankenstein series all focuses on him rather than on a monster. And this has got to be the weirdest Frankenstein movie ever, all about the doctor trying to experiment with the soul, try to trap the soul before it goes up to heaven, I guess, or whatever, afterlife. And he ends up putting the soul of somebody into the body of someone else, raising them from the dead, all so they can carry out some righteous vengeance against some horrible dudes. It's violent, it's got sex appeal, it's got really good dialogue, and a really fun but very strange story. 92, Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde from 1971. This is my favorite of Hammer's Jekyll and Hyde movies, but it also feels like a Jack the Ripper film and a Burke and Hare movie. It merges so many classic gothic horror tales together and is another really weird movie that I think is so interesting and so much fun to watch. 91, Tenebrae from 1982. I love Italian giallos, and while I don't necessarily think every giallo is a horror film, some of them are much more just straightforward thrillers. Tenebrae is a horror movie. It's as much slasher as it is giallo, and it's one of the most gloriously bloody ever made. Dario Argento rules, and this will not be the last time we see him on this list.
Who is mad enough to enter that world of darkness?
The Funhouse.
At 90, The Funhouse from 1981. I'm a huge fan of Tobe Hooper, and this is one of his best movies. A good old-fashioned slasher movie taking place at a carnival, at a fair kind of situation. And I love that kind of atmosphere with a group of teenagers who spend the night in the Funhouse and encounter a lot more horror than they bargained for. Number 89, Reanimator from 1985. The film that kicked off Stuart Gordon's run of H.P. Lovecraft adaptations, and this is one of the best. It's got such a phenomenal cast with Jeffrey Combs, Barbara Crampton, Bruce Abbott. Everyone rules here, and it is such a gloriously maniacal film with extreme gore, extreme dark, gross, macabre situations that heighten it into even comedic territory. 88, Soul Survivor from 1984. A film that feels so influential on movies like Final Destination and It Follows. All about that idea of if you are the sole survivor of a situation, maybe you are supposed to die and maybe death itself is coming for you. The creeping dread paranoia of this movie is so thick, but it still has great characters that I genuinely care about, an emotional romance in there. I think everything about this movie works so well. 87, The Blood on Satan's Claw from 1971. If you like typical folk horror movies about people in the distant past living in rural lands that are afraid the devil is lurking in the woods and coming for them, this is one of the best movies about that idea. Tales from the Crypt from 1972. I'm a big fan of those classic British anthology horror films from Amicus. This is one of the best of them. This has got one of the best scary Santa Clauses you will ever see. Krampus from 2015. After I saw this movie for the first time, it definitely would not have been on this list, but this is one that has just grown on me so much. I revisit it every single Christmas season, and it's become one of the most important Christmas movies of all time for me. I love that it works equally well as a classic Christmas family movie and a dark and violent horror movie. It serves both audiences, and I think Krampus is the most interesting figure of Christmas horror. This is spooky, this is fun, this is funny, and it's got all those Christmas vibes I love. Number 84, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers from 1988. Halloween is my favorite horror franchise, and this one is my favorite of the sequels. This is like one of the coziest films ever made for me. I mean, even when you just look at the opening credits, it's got some of the best dark and foreboding fall Halloween atmosphere you will ever see in your life. But then I love these characters so much. I think Rachel even rivals Laurie for the possible best final girl of the franchise. Of course, here you've got Danielle Harris as Jamie Lloyd. She's great. A lackluster Michael Myers mask is not enough to detract this as being one of my favorite 80s slashers and definitely one of my favorite Halloween movies. 83, The Brides of Dracula from 1960. This is Hammer's second Dracula movie, but it's kind of like the Halloween 3 of the franchise where there's no actual Dracula in it. Instead, it follows the continued adventures of Van Helsing as he goes out to stop a different vampire. The atmosphere here is truly some of the best Hammer ever produced, and Peter Cushing is just the greatest Van Helsing, and this is the best showcase for what makes him awesome. But speaking of Dracula, at number 82, Dracula from 1979. This is a too often forgotten adaptation of Bram Stoker's story. It brings in Frank Langella as Dracula, who is a much more handsome and charming and romantic version of Dracula, which may not necessarily be my favorite version of the character, but I think it works really well in the context of this movie and is really one of my favorite gothic romance films. Number 81, The House That Dripped Blood from 1971. This is my personal favorite of the Amicus anthologies. I think every segment here is really good. It's got an amazing cast with, of course, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, a good mix of segments that are made to be frightening, to be dark and intense, and a little bit of comedy in there as well. Like there's a really fun and funny vampire segment in here that actually has Ingrid Pitt. I really think this is one of the top, most consistent horror anthologies ever made.
Party's over.
Dead Alive.
Number 80, Dead Alive from 1992. This is one that I just recently discovered how much I love it. I'd seen it for the first time many years ago, and at that time, the extreme maniacal gore of this was just too much for me. Like, I was just like, I can't even process the amount of carnage on screen. Recently rewatching it, I loved it from start to finish. I think it's genuinely perfect. It's a New Zealand film directed by Peter Jackson. I love the characters here. I think they're so much fun to watch. They're so sweet. And the gore being so extreme actually reaches comedic levels for me. I think it's really hilarious. And the imagination on display is amazing. This truly is one of the most creative zombie movies ever made. 79, Hereditary from 2018. This is on the list because of how genuinely scary it is. I will never forget my theatrical experience watching this, being absolutely terrified and shocked almost from start to finish. It's not necessarily one that I rewatch a lot, but it doesn't need to be. It has such an emotional power to it that is difficult to go back to, but always rewarding. 78, The Shining from 1980. I just recently saw the 90s miniseries version of this story for the first time, which is much closer to Stephen King's book. And I really did connect to Jack and his tragic figure in that. And it almost made this movie decrease a little bit in my estimation as a result, because I think Jack is not a terribly interesting character here. He's a weird, kooky, maniacal weirdo. And Jack Nicholson is super fun to watch here, but he's not necessarily fascinating. But I need to remember that every other character in here, Wendy, Danny, even Halloran, are phenomenal characters. And I think Wendy is so sympathetic. It's weird that it feels like Kubrick seems to have connected more to Wendy than to Jack, while Stephen King, I think, connects more to Jack, because Kubrick treated Shelley Duvall so terribly on the set of this. And that's always going to be a dark cloud over this movie. The atmosphere is spectacular. I love the score. It's one of my favorite horror movie scores of all time. And the ghost stuff is genuinely unsettling. 77, Black Sabbath from 1963. My personal favorite Mario Bava movie. Sometimes his films can be a little too slow for me, but this being an anthology, a collection of 3 different short stories, I think helps that quite a bit. You've got Boris Karloff as the through line throughout these stories, and even playing a vampire in a spectacular vampire segment in here that is so good. This is one of those anthologies where I think every segment is amazing, and every segment is made to be scary. And usually anthologies have some kind of comedy levity. This one has none. It's bleak, it's terrifying, and it's awesome. 76, Weapons from 2025. Of course, the most recent movie on the list. This one just recently came out, and it was very difficult for me to put it on the list at all and to rank it because it's just so new. It's so fresh in my mind, but I cannot deny how much I genuinely love this movie. What an amazing experience I had watching it for the first time. I think it's fascinating. I think the mystery is so intriguing, and the answers to the mystery genuinely live up to that. All the performances, all of the acting, Everything about Weapons, I think, is awesome. People have pointed out a few minor plot holes in here. None of those I care about, and I think they're very well explained by the supernatural aspects of this movie. You can't necessarily think about this film all in real-world context. You've got to remember the supernatural aspects that don't actually exist. But I think Weapons is amazing, and I'm so excited to watch it many more times throughout the rest of my life. Day of the Dead from 1984. George Romero's classic conclusion to his original Dead trilogy. It's still one of the best zombie movies ever made, and I would say it does have the greatest gore effects ever put on screen. 74, The Void from 2016. A modern-made sort of 80s homage to films like The Thing and Hellraiser, but on its own, genuinely being one of the best cosmic horror films I've ever seen. It's so intense and crazy and bonkers, but always in a scary way, and I do think that's really impressive. 73, Color Out of Space from 2019. Another one of my favorite cosmic horror films of all time. This is based on H.P. Lovecraft's story of the same name, and I think everything about this is weird and unsettling, but anchored by a really strong first act setting up this family that makes me care about them, that just makes all the bizarre Lovecraftian cosmic craziness all the more meaningful. 72, Session 9 from 2001. While I love so many horror movies so much, I'm fairly rarely genuinely viscerally scared by movies. I just saw Session 9 for the first time this year, and it's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. This thing terrified me, and the atmosphere of this abandoned asylum, which the production designers did very little to change. It's mostly just how they found it, is so scary. Like, it's so unsettling, and I think it's one of the best psychological horror films I've ever seen. 71, Bride of Frankenstein from 1935. Absolutely one of the top most important horror films of my childhood. I grew up on this movie. I love it so much. I think it's the only Frankenstein film where the monster is genuinely the protagonist, and that's really cool to see.
Each man creates his own heaven, his own hell.
Let me see your face.
70, The Mask of the Red Death from 1964. I am a huge Vincent Price fan, and this was not the first, and it's not going to be the last time you're going to hear about Vincent Price, but I think this is my favorite of his performances. He is so amazing as Prince Prospero, a Satanist, dictator-like leader over a village that is being ravaged by the plague, all while he stays safely away from it in his castle. It's one of the many Edgar Allan Poe adaptations that Roger Corman and Vincent Price made together, and it's undeniably one of the best, if not the best, though I do have a favorite that'll be coming up a little later. 69, Carnival of Souls from 1962. This is a very low-budget indie horror film from the 60s that I still think is one of the most genuinely creepy movies ever made. 68, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. I know this is going to be criminally low for a lot of people, but I do have massive respect and love for Texas Chainsaw. It is so viscerally scary and disturbing, even though it doesn't actually show a lot of gore on screen, which I think is amazing. I do find the characterization of Leatherface so remarkable. I mean, his design is amazing and it's become incredibly iconic, but the way they made him into just like this scared child that just reacts out of fear rather than attacking in brutality, I think that's amazing. Now, when it comes to the protagonist, though, and the story, like, there are a lot of other horror movies that I prefer, but when I want to have this kind of grungy, grimy, horrifying experience, this is one of the best movies to deliver that. 67, Nosferatu from 2024. I know it's controversial to say it these days, but this is my favorite version of Nosferatu. Robert Eggers is one of my favorite filmmakers working today, like very near the top. And since he started working, I've been wanting to see a classic vampire film from him. And he delivered a perfect vampire movie for me, like almost ripped out of my brain. This is the kind of gothic, godlike vampire monster that I want to see. I thought it was amazing, like on a visual level, all of the characters, all of the performances, the vampire himself. It's perfect for me personally. 66, Creature from the Black Lagoon from 1964. I love a guy in a rubber suit monster, and I still say the Creature from the Black Lagoon is one of the best ones ever, but everything else around him, this is just an awesome movie. It's genuinely fun and exciting and has a really sympathetic main character. That being the creature, but all the other characters are interesting too. 65, The Exorcist 3 from 1990. I know it's going to be shocking for a lot of people, but this is my favorite Exorcist movie. I greatly respect the original film and I do enjoy watching it, but I'm just not that into the demon possession subgenre, either the aesthetics of it or the ideas of it. I don't find it that interesting. But this is a demon possession movie for people like me. It treats the whole idea in a much more unique way that I just find more interesting. I also can't deny that when I first saw this, it was a terrifying experience. It was a really scary movie, and I've never personally been scared by the original Exorcist. George C. Scott gives an incredible performance here. I think he's a great protagonist, and Brad Dourif gets to be an amazing villain. 64, The Others from 2001. I first saw this when I was a kid, and for a long time it existed in my brain as like the normie horror movie, and when I finally gave it another chance as an adult, it kind of blew my mind. Like, it is one of the most perfect, classic, gothic haunted house movies I've ever seen in my life. And in recent years, that's come to be one of my favorite kinds of movies ever, and The Others does it perfectly. 63, The Fly from 1958. I first saw this when I was a kid, and to this day, I've never been scared by a movie more than I was scared by the original The Fly, specifically the ending with the spider web. It's burned into my brain. I will never forget it. But to this day, I still think this is an awesome movie that deserves so much respect. 62, Prince of Darkness from 1987. I've always been fascinated by the idea, the concept of the devil, and John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness might be the movie that is the most fascinated by it. Like, the whole film is built around a deconstruction of the idea of the devil. How could it work? How could it be paired with actual science? And I just find this film riveting from start to finish, and I do think it's John Carpenter's scariest movie. 61, Malignant from 2021. This is such a personal favorite for me. I will never forget seeing this for the first time in theaters, going into it knowing it's a James Wan movie and expecting another The Conjuring kind of riff, and instead I got a beautiful homage to the weirdest, the most bonkers cult horror films of the 70s and 80s. Malignant is full camp that goes for it in every way from start to finish, and I love every second of this bizarro horror movie. Oh my gosh, it is so awesome.
The ghosts are waiting, so won't you join me in the house on Haunted Hill?
Number 60, House on Haunted Hill from 1959. A classic from my childhood. I will just never stop loving this wonderfully cozy, spooky, fun haunted house Halloween-y movie. Oh, it's just the best. 59, Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1956. There's a lot of sci-fi horror films from the 50s. I love a lot of them. It was a really fun time. But this is the best of them, I think. This one, I think, perfectly holds up to today. Like, the characters are still interesting. The story is still intriguing and relatable. It's a perfect framework to communicate some kind of social commentary, so much so that Invasion of the Body Snatchers is kind of a ink blot painting where people have put so many of their own ideologies onto it, saying it's saying this and saying that. But no matter what, it's so fun. It's genuinely such a great movie and does have some really creepy moments. 58, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad from 1949. A Disney film that puts two different shorts together, but this is really just here because of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I am a ridiculous fanboy for the Headless Horseman and all things Sleepy Hollow, and this animated version, all narrated by Bing Crosby, could not be more perfect. 57, Dracula from 1931. This is the first horror movie that I can remember seeing. It's actually the first movie I can remember seeing. Bela Lugosi's Dracula has always been so massively important to me. And even though I know this gets a lot of criticism to this day, like it's too slow, it's too stagey, I get it. But I still love rewatching this film. I love Bela Lugosi and Dwight Frye, and the beginning in Transylvania might be the best gothic atmosphere ever captured on film. I still love this movie to death. 56, The Plague of the Zombies from 1966. This is Hammer's only attempt at making a zombie movie, and I think it's awesome and deserves so much more respect than it gets. 55, Psycho from 1960. Alfred Hitchcock's original classic, and this is one that's just grown on me over the years. I've rewatched it so many times. I find it so rewatchable, so fun, and so intense. Like, this actually might be Hitchcock's most intense movie. And Anthony Perkins' performance, it's just the best. 54, Twins of Evil from 1971. This is another big personal favorite. It's one of my favorite Hammer vampire films. I've described it before as a kitchen sink movie. They throw so much at it. Vampires, witch hunting, Satanism, satanic rituals. It's got so much crazy gothic horror goodness in here, and I love it. The Evil Dead from 1981. One of the best horror franchises of all time, but this one is my personal favorite. I love the incredibly grungy, scrappy, indie spirit to this, making one of the most visceral, disgusting, disturbing horror movies ever made, but still in a really fun way. 52, Silver Bullet from 1985. One of my favorite things about the horror genre is just a good old-fashioned Stephen King small town, and Silver Bullet is one of the best movies for Stephen King atmosphere, but I love Corey Haim and Gary Busey, like all the characters, and the whole story about a werewolf attacking this kid trying to solve it. It's one of my favorite cozy horror films ever. I love it so much. 51, Phenomena from 1985. One of the best Dario Argento movies. This thing is so weird. Girl communicates with bugs, has to solve murders, an insane third act with some of the most bizarre and bonkers content that's ever been put in a movie. Phenomena rules.
Who am I here? You're a very bad girl.
The Stepfather.
Cracking into the top 50, The Stepfather from 1987. I love Terry O'Quinn in this movie. As a serial killer who's obsessed with the traditional American family, is trying to get that for himself, but every time things don't work out, as things often don't work out in life and there are imperfections, he just goes and kills people. It's so interesting and violent and disturbing, but always fun to watch. 49, Videodrome from 1983. This is just one of the most pure David Cronenberg movies ever made, dealing with so many of his favorite ideas, the merging of technology and sexuality and media and violence. And it all comes together in this really strange movie that almost shouldn't work, but it does. It works so well. It's so weird, but it is so fascinating. 48, Dr. Sleep from 2019. I really think this Mike Flanagan film is one of the greatest horror sequels ever made. I love how it continues the story of The Shining in some very strange and different and unexpected ways. It is by no means a remake of The Shining, but still incorporates elements of that first film, and specifically that first Kubrick film, and brings it all together so beautifully. I like it better than The Shining because I think it's such a powerful emotional experience, and I find it to be so much more meaningful. And Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat is like one of the coolest horror villains. 47, Child's Play from 1988. Of course, Chucky is one of the most iconic horror characters. I love Chucky. I love this whole franchise, but to me, there's still no question the first one is the best one. 46, The Pit and the Pendulum from 1961. This is my favorite Edgar Allan Poe movie. It's my favorite Vincent Price movie. I just think it is so blissfully fun. It is so enjoyable. The merging of Vincent Price and Barbara Steele, this gothic castle, its dark, macabre ideas about torture and possession of evil family members from beyond the grave. Man, it rules. The Pit and the Pendulum is a blast. 45, The Gorgon from 1964. Such a strange Hammer horror film, all centered around a Medusa creature, a Gorgon, turning people into stone. It almost shouldn't work as well as it does, but I think it is a beautiful fantasy horror film. This is another one that, of course, has Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. Everyone in this movie rules, and the atmosphere is beautiful. 44, Scream from 1996. While I know this is the favorite horror film, or near the favorite for a lot of people, and some might think this is criminally low, I do love this movie. It is so rewatchable. It is so fun. Such a blast of 90s teen horror. Yes, it's not near the top. There's a lot of movies that I like better, but I would never take away from what a perfect 5-star movie the original Scream is. 43, The Blob from 1988. This is one of the greatest horror remakes ever. I think the original The Blob is fun enough. I think it's okay. I don't think it's anywhere near one of the best 50s sci-fi movies, this remake kicks everything up a notch. The effects are amazing. The characters are so likable. Like, I love these people, watching them run around this very quaint, cozy small town, fighting off a giant monster blob that's just eating everything. It's awesome. 42, Suspiria from 1977. The typical answer, but I think the right answer for the best Dario Argento movie. The last time I saw this was actually at a drive-in theater, and it was like a transcendent experience. I love Suspiria. The colors, the kill scenes, every kill is like an amazing set piece, each one special in their own way. But I also think Jessica Harper is a genuinely really good lead for this. Suspiria is weird Italian craziness that happens to be done perfectly. 41, Candyman from 1992. Everything about Candyman is really good, but this is here because of Tony Todd. He is one of the greatest horror icons of all time. I said before in a video that I feel like he's Freddy Krueger meets Dracula. Like, he is that kind of supernatural slasher, scary in a Freddy way, but he's got this grandiose, classy charisma to him that makes you feel drawn to him, like a mix of a demon and an angel. I think he's such an amazing character, and everything about the way they build up his legend is masterfully executed.
My Bloody Valentine.
Number 40, My Bloody Valentine from 1981. Just one of my personal favorite slasher films. I love a good old-fashioned classic 80s slasher, and this nails everything about those movies perfectly. The Miner is an amazing villain. He's got such a great look to him. I love the feeling of this small Canadian town. It feels very authentic because it is. It was filmed in a place just like this. The cast of characters is great. There's a love triangle at the center that is surprisingly emotional. And if you watch the unrated version, which you can get now in Scream Factory Blu-ray and is the only way to watch it, the kills and the gore are nothing short of spectacular. 39, The Hitcher from 1986. This might be one of the most intense horror films ever made. It is such a crazy, adrenaline-packed thrill ride that I do acknowledge could be looked at as just a thriller. Could have been just a thriller, but I think it's elevated into horror status because of its score, its sound design, just the way it's directed, and the way it frames Rutger Hauer as a supernatural monster. I do think there is something more going on to him than just being a man. And anyway, the performance that Rutger Hauer gives is like mind-blowingly good. He is so scary. 38, Ghostwatch from 1992. One of the scariest movies I have ever seen. This was shown on the BBC on television back in the 90s, and people didn't know it was fake. It's very much made to seem like a normal news report, just about some people, some paranormal experts going into a supposedly haunted house, doing some investigating. But what happens in there is so scary, and all the more so because it feels so real. And I love hearing those stories of people who actually experienced it on TV back then just being horrified. Like, I can't imagine. 37, The Fly from 1986. It really blows my mind just how emotional, how tragic this movie is, and how absolutely disgusting it is, because the practical effects shown on screen showing Seth Brundle's deterioration into this fly monster, it's so gross, but like all the more so because of how grounded you feel in loving these characters and how sad it is. 36, Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter from 1984. I really am a huge fan of the Friday the 13th movies. I like almost all of them to one degree or another. Just a good old-fashioned movie about Jason Voorhees coming in, killing off campers and teens. It's all just such good fun. This is the only one that's making the list. I absolutely stand by it being my favorite. I think it's the most legitimately great movie of the bunch. If you are a fan of this kind of film, this is one of the best to ever do it. 35, City of the Living Dead from 1980. I'm a huge fan of Lucio Fulci's Gates of Hell trilogy, and I think this is the best of the bunch. A heavily H.P. Lovecraft influenced zombie movie about a gate to hell literally opening and all of the evil that comes with that. 34, Drag Me to Hell from 2009. For some people, this is going to be comically overrating this movie, but I don't care. I think this is one of the most fun movies I've ever seen, and it's my favorite Sam Raimi horror film. Yes, it's PG-13, but I think it doesn't need a lot of blood and gore because Sam Raimi's direction is just so visceral, so fun. He still gives us so many crazy horror gags all throughout, even without it being particularly graphic. I think that's really impressive. I love the intense story of this girl trying to save herself from a death curse from the scary looking witch. Everything about this is awesome. 33, Bud Abbott and Lou Costello Meet Frankenstein from 1948. This is my favorite horror comedy. It is absolutely hilarious. Abbott and Costello are so funny, but I love that the monsters are taken seriously. You get the classic Universal monsters, even with Bela Lugosi as Dracula, the only other time he played Dracula other than that first Dracula film. It works as a Universal Monsters film, but with these kooky, hilarious guys thrown in there, it just makes for the perfect combination for an amazing horror comedy. 32, Dracula Has Risen from the Grave from 1968. My favorite of the Hammer Dracula sequels. It's one of the most enjoyable horror films of all time for me and one that I watch every Halloween season. I love the characters and Christopher Lee as Dracula is in absolute top form. 31, Rosemary's Baby from 1968. There are a lot of movies about the impregnation and the birth of the Antichrist. They're all trying to recapture the magic of Rosemary's Baby because Rosemary's Baby is the best.
All these traditions have started to protect us, but nowadays, no one really cares.
Trick or Treat from 2007, because I am just so in love with the holiday of Halloween. And this is probably the most Halloween-y movie ever made. I do love all of the stories. The atmosphere of so many Halloween decorations everywhere is amazing. And Sam is such an incredible Halloween icon. Tales from the Dark Side, the movie from 1990. This is my personal favorite horror anthology of all time. It's perfectly consistent. Every segment is awesome. But the final segment with the gargoyle is my favorite piece of any horror anthology ever made. Psycho 2 from 1983. Yes, I am one of those people that prefers Psycho 2 to even the original. While I think the original is the more intense movie, this is the one that is more emotional, and I get so on Norman Bates' side watching him try to build a normal life. He's such a great underdog character, all the while you don't know, is he back to his old serial killing ways? This movie rules. The Silence of the Lambs. Man, I hadn't seen this in so many years until I just rewatched it earlier this year and rediscovered that this is one of the most perfect movies of all time. Some people deny that it's a horror film. I think that's kind of crazy because unlike some other serial killer thrillers, this has got horror sequences, whether it be Hannibal's escape or Clarice Starling in Buffalo Bill's house and it feels like a house of horrors kind of situation. This movie is clearly trying to scare you. And clearly, if you look at the reputation of this, it did it incredibly well. Night of the Comet from 1984. I am not saying that Night of the Comet is better than almost any of the movies that are below it, but for me personally, this is such a comfort movie. As a fan of just fun 80s vibes, this is one of the best. I think for a lot of people, they're going to first go to The Lost Boys for just fun, cozy 80s vibes in a horror movie. For me, I would lean more to Night of the Comet. The Orphanage from 2007. It is genuinely scary, but the story is so amazing about this woman who lost her child. And it's so intense and sad just because of that. But then watching her uncover this ghost children mystery within her house, it is so scary. It is so creepy, but it brings me in emotionally so deeply and leads to one of the greatest horror movie endings I've ever seen. 24, An American Werewolf in London from 1981. Man, I love werewolf movies, but I particularly love them when they're tragic. And this is one of those just great tragic werewolf films about a man that we come to really enjoy as a character who just falls into a horrible werewolf curse. The werewolf here looks amazing. I love the practical effects of it. I love the romance in here and the comedy moments with Griffin Dunn. So good, but I wouldn't call this overall a horror comedy because still at its heart, it's a scary, visceral, and sad horror flick. 23, From Beyond from 1986. My favorite H.P. Lovecraft adaptation. It's hard not to compare this to Reanimator because it's got several of the same cast members. It's also directed by Stuart Gordon. But while Reanimator is like the fun and funny one, From Beyond is much more serious. And I love how grim it is in diving into some of the weirdest and most bonkers horror content I've ever seen. It's just that merging of crazy and scary that works amazingly for me. The Witch from 2015. For my money, this is the scariest movie ever made. If you take away like my childhood experiences with horror movies like The Fly, as an adult, I've never been as terrified by a movie as I was by The Witch. I love the atmosphere of it so much, the way it takes place in the 1600s. It's that perfect kind of folk horror feeling, being afraid of witches and devils out in the woods. But it does it in a way that is so like authentic, historical, that makes me believe this fantastical tale. The Omen from 1976. Now, this is my favorite satanic horror film ever made. No other film has been this perfect at capturing the feeling of ultimate satanic evil. I think a lot of that has to do with the score, but also the kills and the story, like discovering that your child may be the Antichrist and you may have to do something about that. Like, it's a horrifying idea, and The Omen captures it perfectly.
When there is no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead from 1978. George Romero's peak masterpiece in the zombie genre, and he has still yet to be beat. In the Mouth of Madness from 1984. John Carpenter's exploration of Lovecraft, Stephen King, and the idea of an author bringing forth cosmic evil into the world to bring about the full apocalypse. It is so fun. Hellraiser from 1987. Directed by Clive Barker and based on his own book, this is one of the most creative movies I've ever seen. And yes, I did say that The Omen's my favorite satanic horror film. I don't consider Hellraiser to be satanic. I think its ideas of demons and hell goes beyond religious ideas and is much more cosmic in its nature, which just adds to like how creative it is. I love the Cenobites, Pinhead, they're great, but I love that they take a back seat in this movie, and it's much more about Julia and Frank, this incredibly dark situation happening on Earth that the Cenobites merely show up to influence. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from 1931. This is the most shocking and transgressive horror film of the 1930s, of the pre-code era, and Frederick March, I think, gives one of the greatest performances of all time as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, being completely unrecognizable between the two, and he's still one of the only actors to get an Academy Award for a horror film. 16, Poltergeist from 1982. This will always hold such a special place in my heart because it was the transitional movie for me between being a kid who was too scared of horror movies and just terrified of them and wanted nothing to do with them as a result, except for like the Universal monsters, and then being an obsessive horror fan as a teenager and adult. This was the movie that showed me horror movies could be fun. And I watched this expecting to be terrified of it and just loved it, just had a blast. And it is a movie that for a while as an adult, I kind of left behind, moved on to bigger, crazier, scarier things. But rewatching it within the past year as a parent now, I found a whole new love and connection to this amazing film. Number 15, Carrie from 1976. Absolute Stephen King and Brian De Palma perfection. It is a simple high school tale of bullying, of telekinesis that is executed perfectly from start to finish, leading up to one of the most amazing finales the horror genre has ever seen. 14, Sleepy Hollow from 1999. Certainly not one of the most important horror movies ever made, and is a blockbuster popcorn fun horror flick, but for me, it's like the perfect version of that. Now, like I said, I love the Sleepy Hollow story. I love the Headless Horseman, and this version is very different, but it's an example of changing up the source material and your new ideas working. I love how exciting and thrilling this movie is, all with absolute ideal horror movie atmosphere for me personally. This is one of those films I love to rewatch every October. Lucky number 13, The Curse of Frankenstein from 1957. Speaking of switching up the source material, it's dramatically different from any other other Frankenstein anything that had come before or since. This frames the Doctor as the villain. Peter Cushing is amazing as Dr. Frankenstein here, but it's Hammer's first gothic horror film, and I still think it is one of their best. Number 12, The Wicker Man from 1973. I still think this is the ideal version of a folk horror movie. If you're talking about those typical ideas of a small village that worships a pagan god, wants to sacrifice something to it to appease it, to make for a bountiful harvest, all those ideas have never been done better than this one. And I love the feeling of this movie so much. Like, I love spending time on this island. It really is fun. I love how it's a musical. It's got great music all throughout. Christopher Lee is really charismatic as Lord Summerisle. He is awesome. And I do find this fascinating, how there are a lot of debates between the main character, who's a devout Christian, and the pagans that are on this island. And it all leads to one of the best and scariest finales of a horror film. Just outside the top 10, Pet Sematary from 1989. While this is a folk horror movie, and I do think The Wicker Man is the ultimate folk horror film, just as a movie, in my personal opinion, I love Pet Sematary even more. It is my favorite Stephen King movie. I love the Stephen King vibe, and for me, no movie's ever captured it so perfectly. Like, Pet Sematary is the Stephen King feeling. It's a great story, a tragic one, a horrifying one, but I do think this movie finds a way to tell it in a way that makes it entertaining and not just a drudging crawl through misery, like the book actually feels quite a bit. They're able to make it more palatable, which some people might think is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing, because this is one of the most rewatchable horror movies for me ever. I've seen it so many times.
This is KB Antonio Bay. Stevie Wayne here.
Cracking into the top 10, The Fog from 1980. John Carpenter is my favorite director of all time, and that's really going to show in this top 10. The Fog is one of the best feeling movies ever made. I love the idea of a campfire ghost story, and this is one that kicks off with an actual campfire ghost story and then tells the continuation of that story for the rest of the film, about a small town that had wronged a group of people that died, and now ghost pirates are coming back from the grave to exact revenge. When it comes to atmosphere, score, cast, The Fog is just one of the best. It's one of my favorite things ever. But speaking of John Carpenter, The Thing from 1982. When it comes to practical monster effects, nothing has ever beat The Thing. The creatures are so wildly creative here, and I love how they show them fully. There's no obscuring things in shadow, kind of hiding things, leaving anything to your imagination. This movie might be the best example of all time at not leaving things to your imagination, because they don't need to, because they created the most amazing monsters ever to show on screen, and it's mind-blowing. The Thing is so tense. It is an ultimate example of paranoia. Kurt Russell, the whole cast, every performance is amazing. The Thing is one of the greatest movies ever made. Number 8, Frankenstein from 1931. The Universal monsters were so important to me as a kid, and Frankenstein, I think, is still one of the greatest horror films ever made. It's also, like Curse of Frankenstein, very different from the original source material, but I'm one of those people that I like Frankenstein movies better than the book, and I love this classic monster version of Frankenstein. It's now so iconic, and it's the version I first grew up with, so this is the ultimate Frankenstein for me. Boris Karloff's performance is amazing. The makeup is amazing. It probably is the most iconic monster design of all time, and that's for very good reason. Number 7, Bram Stoker's Dracula. I know in some circles this is an unpopular movie, but for me, it's incredible. It is the ultimate example of a grandiose, operatic, gothic horror movie. I love everything about this. I know Keanu Reeves is not great, whatever. I really don't care anymore. Man, is Gary Oldman an amazing example of a godlike Dracula. I love this version of Dracula that does not feel earthbound. He feels like a spiritual evil, changing forms, bending the laws of physics all around him. The colors, the atmosphere, the cinematography, the very practical in-camera effects that they did for this all make it one of my favorite movies of all time. But at number 6, Horror of Dracula from 1958. A while back, I did a list on my top Dracula movies, and I put Bram Stoker's Dracula as number 1 and Horror of Dracula as number 2. And this may seem like a contradiction, but this has come up a few times on this list, right, where I do think Bram Stoker's Dracula is the ultimate Dracula movie. It's much closer to the book, not exactly, but it's much closer to the book. And it's the ultimate example of Dracula as a godlike evil power. But just as a movie, just of how much I love it as a horror flick, I gotta put Hammer's Dracula above it. It's a film that even since I started this channel, I've come to love more. I used to consider Curse of Frankenstein my favorite Hammer movie. Now I consider this one. It's just so perfect from start to finish. And I can't call Bram Stoker's Dracula absolutely perfect technically. This one I think I can. Christopher Lee is amazing. Peter Cushing is the best Van Helsing. And they took a grandiose story, a novel, and condensed it to just a really tight, fast-moving 80 to 90-minute movie that just moves like crazy and feels perfectly well-paced. But kicking off the top 5, A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984. One of the movies that just makes me the happiest. Like, I knew if you grew up in the 80s, you were probably terrified by Nightmare on Elm Street. I've never been terrified by Nightmare on Elm Street. I saw it for the first time as an adult, and I just thought it was a fun 80s movie. And it's come to be like one of my ultimate comfort movies, one of my movies that I go to just have fun, because I love it so much. I love the characters. I love Freddy. Although Freddy has very limited screen time, much like Christopher Lee in Horror Dracula, actually. I think it's kind of similar screen times, but they both make such an impact. Like, the design of Freddy, it blows my mind that they got it this perfectly between the sweater and the hat and the glove and the actor. It was a perfect storm of everything coming together. And this movie also has my favorite kill in any horror movie ever, which is Tina going up the walls onto the ceiling. That is one of the greatest sequences I've ever seen in a horror movie. Number 4, Halloween from 1978. I actually used to consider A Nightmare on Elm Street my favorite slasher movie, but over time, nah, guys, it's Halloween. Like, Michael Myers, he's my boy. I just love Michael so much. He's like the ultimate horror character along with Dracula for me. I feel like as the list goes up, it gets a little bit harder to describe like my love. Like, why do I love Halloween so much? Like, everything. Like, I think it's so perfect. The feeling of the town, the Halloween vibe. The characters are technically not fascinating, but I love them. And this is one of the ultimate cozy movies for me. I think just that's the way to put it. It feels like Halloween. It feels like October. It feels like the ultimate horror movie in so many ways, while being so simple. John Carpenter just rules, and he just makes it as perfect as possible. It's hard for anything to beat Halloween, but my top 3 do. So my number 3 is The Wolfman from 1941. This is my favorite Universal Monsters movie, and I just think it's one of the most perfect things ever made, except for the fact that at one point Larry Talbot turns into the Wolfman while he's wearing a white undershirt, and then it cuts to him as the Wolfman. He's fully dressed. So, like, as a werewolf, did he get dressed and tuck in his shirt? I've never understood that. That's the only thing making this not perfect, I guess. But for me, it is the ultimate werewolf story. And just on a gut reaction level that's a little bit hard to describe, almost nothing makes me happier than watching The Wolfman every Halloween season. The poem, Even a Man Who's Pure of Heart Says His Prayers by Night, like all the side characters, the romance, the score. It's got one of the greatest horror scores of all time. The Wolfman is an ultimate Cobwebs movie. That's the way I gotta say it. Number 2, Jaws from 1975. And this is one where, like, I understand people calling its status as a horror film into question, because in a lot of ways it does feel more like a men on a mission action adventure story. I think the first half feels very clearly horror. The second half feels a little more action adventure. But the funny thing is, I wouldn't call like any other shark movie into question for being a horror film. It's just that Jaws almost feels too good to go in any genre. Like, it's just Jaws, and it's the greatest movie ever made. I do think Jaws is the greatest film of all time. It's only not my number 1 because of just personal love, but I have been a crazy fan of Jaws ever since I was a little kid. Everything about it is spectacular. The shark is still working. This movie's the best.
Look, I know it's crazy. I know that, but...
Fright Night.
But at number 1, Fright Night from 1985. I don't expect anybody to agree with me. I know there are better movies below this, certainly much more important movies. But this is my personal favorite movie because no movie makes me happier. No movie. It's the most fun movie I've ever seen. It's my favorite movie to show people. I love to throw on Fright Night for folks and it always works, or just recommend it to people. They always enjoy it. Chris Sarandon is such an amazing vampire, but I love our trio of teen characters trying to go up against him. It really is the perfect example of a classic gothic vampire movie meets an 80s teen movie. It puts those things together spectacularly, and even though The Thing does have the best practical monster effects, Fright Night is not far behind. I think the practical effects in Fright Night are amazing, and the monsters are so cool. And who can forget the heart of the movie, Roddy McDowall as Peter Vincent. He really does elevate the emotion of this film. Like, he makes this such a beautiful personal experience, I think. Before I wrap this up, I just want to send out a huge thank you to my patrons who truly make this channel possible and huge videos like this possible. If anyone else wants to support me, the link to my Patreon is always in the description below. And I want to send out a special shout out to Mark Bessinger, Acams Lintbrush, and Aaron Yostin. You guys are the absolute best. But I would love to know your favorite horror movies of all time. Let me know down in the comments below. If you're up to the challenge, your top 100, although I don't recommend this. This is an insane thing to do. Thank you guys so much for watching this entire video. If you want to hang out with me even more, you can click the video on the screen and hit the like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Don't forget to enjoy yourselves today, have some fun, and I'll see you next time. Happy Halloween.